So we'll start again, this time looking at Annotation Studio and the future directions of Annotation Studio. You know, as some of you might know, we just launched a brand new version that you will see. But then you also see, you know, sort of the next iterations that will be coming up, you know, in the next 6 months or even a little further out. And it's really a great pleasure to introduce Jamie Folsom, who is the lead developer, technical director in HyperStudio. And Jamie really has been instrumental from a technical point of view to shape Annotation Studio in the way that you see right now, you know, connecting up to open source communities around the annotator, but also bringing other people in, and so really to form a community around that. So this has been really exciting to see that it's not only collaboration that's going on with Annotation Studio in the classroom and among educators, but it's also around the technology and bringing other developers into the mix, and this has been really great to see. And Jamie is clearly one of the very unusual developers because he actually has a humanities background. So he has a master's in education from Harvard. And he has also extensively, you know, taught as a French teacher, including, you know, Africa and here. So there's a lot of synergy, you know, from his own background and his experience in developing software and online sites and applications that he has been able to bring into the mix. So we're really glad to have him. Please welcome Jamie Folsom.
Thank you, Kurt. Can you hear me? All right, let's see if we can wake up the computer here. So as Kurt said, my name is Jamie Folsom. I am lead developer at HyperStudio and on Annotation Studio. And I want to talk today a bit about the roadmap for the tool, for the software. So this morning you heard a bit about annotation as a tool for teaching and learning in writing. And this afternoon you'll hear more about annotation as a tool or a tactic for teaching and learning in reading. I'm going to do things in the opposite order. I'll talk first about what's available now or in beta form, or will be available soon. And most of those features are really features which support reading activity and reading, teaching and learning of reading. What's planned for the first half of 2015 is really much more focused on the other parts of what we are calling the writing cycle. So moving from reading to writing, moving from reading and note-taking to writing and composition. So that's what's planned for the first half of 2015. And for the second half of the year and beyond, we have a bunch more things that we'd like to share with you. So hopefully that will be of interest as well. I'm guessing if history is any indication that I will raise more questions than I answer. We have a very brief 15 minutes for this segment, but we don't have time probably to answer all the questions that may come up in that time. But I do recommend that if you have questions of a technical nature or about anything that I bring up, that you should join a breakout session this afternoon here in this room. So please feel free to join me for that. Also, there's some resources online. These slides are actually online. These are web-based slides. You can follow along now if you want, or you can return to them later. Maybe we'll send out a tweet with that URL so it's a little easier to get to them. So feel free to follow along. And there's a resources slide at the end, which includes a website and also a support forum, which I highly recommend you visit. Especially if you're already using Annotation Studio in the classroom. Lots of instructors have added great content there. Send your students there if they're having trouble, if you don't have time to give them tech support. There's a lot there. So let's talk a little bit about what's available now. As you've all seen from some of the screenshots from people who are using the tool, it is possible now to create documents, to create text documents at this point. Those can originate in HTML format. They can be text files. They can be Word files. Very simple PDFs are now supported in the sense that if you upload one, we will extract the text layer from a PDF if it's been OCR'd. We do not support formatted PDFs yet. That will come eventually in one form or another. but we do have rudimentary support for PDF content. You can embed images, video, links, anything that is possible in a web page is possible in an Annotation Studio document at the moment. You can't yet annotate images or video, but that too is coming in the near future, within this year, we hope. Then documents can be assigned to classes and can be assigned to, or as of recently, can be public. We were talking about this in one of the breakout sessions. It's now possible to have a document which was previously behind a password-protected user authentication system be public, so that the URL will be available to anyone even without an account, including the annotations made by the owner of that document. So that's new. There is a link here to the upload page if you want to try it out, but I'll skip over that for now. Obviously, you can annotate those documents now with a range of media types. So I'll show you by way of demonstration of this. This is the first 5 chapters of Moby Dick. We loaded this fragment of the novel for use in the Melville Electronic Library camp in 2013. Our colleague John Bryant and Wynne Kelly both used it. You can see here my annotations on the text. And you can see in the sidebar that my annotations are visible. So this is the default view. We try to build on what we think is familiar and comfortable for people coming from a non-digital environment who are trying to do reading and note-taking. We think this is a reasonable approximation of what that feels like. But we like to build on that and use the affordances of the technical digital tools available to go beyond that. So I can, for example, say, I don't want to just see my own annotations, but let me see those of by all of the members of my class or group, or if I'm an administrator, I can see all of them. So the point of bringing this up is to demonstrate that it is possible to embed images in annotations. You can see several examples of that. Different examples. And these annotations were done by people who know this stuff well because, of course, they were at a Melville conference. So this is on the public version of the application. And if you're interested in taking a look at it, we can add you so you can take a look at it. So it is possible to annotate with links, images, video, and it is possible to tag annotations, and I'll briefly show how that looks as well. So let's see here. Here's an annotation. I'll make my own. This is how it works. If those of you who haven't used it, you can see I select some text. I see a button. I click it. I'm presented with a small editor. I can add some comments here. So here's my comment. I can add some tags. Let's see. There's my tag, and I can decide whether or not I want my groups to view this annotation. I can make private annotations, and only I can see them. But by checking that box, I make that public. Okay, so there's my annotation with its tag, and I can return to it. So those are some of the things that are possible now, just as far as annotation goes. Also available now is a way to filter annotations. I've already showed you one of the filters, which was the filter that allows me to decide which annotations to see based on who made them. So again, I can see my own, those of my groups, those of my classes, or if I'm an admin, I can see all. I can also choose to filter them based on where they are in the document, and by now, as of this week, by how they're tagged. So let me show you an example of that. And here the example I'm going to show you is, what if I wanted to see only those annotations made by my classmates on the whole text of The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, tagged with the tag dialect, which would be a plausible thing to want to see, given that this novel is so full of interesting language. So here are The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. You can see it's a rather long text. It's easy to load even a very long text into this tool. It's a single long page. It does have embedded images. These are just chapter headings. But you can see that as I move from chapter to chapter, that viewport filter that I mentioned is in play, so that I'm only seeing the annotations in the sidebar which are anchored to the text I can see in the browser at the moment. So if I go up to chapter 3, that annotation in the sidebar goes away, up to chapter 2, etc. Let's go back to chapter 1 and see if there's anything up there. Okay, so there's an annotation made on that front matter. So now I want to see all annotations made by any member of my class on the whole document. So I'll check that one. Let's see if it's going to load. There we go. So there's a large number of annotations, and this is a pretty good example of why I might want to do that. All members of my class on the whole document, they've made a lot of annotations, so it becomes difficult to actually navigate that. I could click through all of them one by one and see them, but I'm really just interested in dialect. So I'm going to type that tag in to this field, and I see just that subset of annotations on the whole document by members of my class with that tag. So it's a very small number. I can now click through those and see them one by one. And they all turn out to have been made by a single user. This person did her homework. No one else has yet. But that's a nice example of how that filtering mechanism can work. So this provides a nice sort of stepping off point, I guess, for how we're going to move from reading to features which will support writing. What we see, and the way we think of what I just did there, was that we created a set of annotations, a group of annotations. We might want to be able to save that group of annotations, to export it, to manipulate it, to sort it, to do something with it. And in particular, we might very well want to create a set of annotations which would support composition of a paper about that theme, whatever it is. That viewport filter allows us the tag filter also allows us to put multiple tags in there. So let's say we're interested in dialect and regional geography and a couple of other things. We could add all those tags in and we would see that set emerge. So from that kind of set functionality, we want to provide a way for users to do some idea organization. So far we just have this one view, but we want to give them a way to take those annotations, and we think of them as sort of cards, like index cards, as you might take notes on an index card, with some metadata, a quote, maybe some tags, and shuffle them, sort them, put them into different groups, experiment with different approaches to the text. And so we're thinking about different interfaces. This is future now, what's coming up in the next 6 months. One of the interfaces we're thinking about using is one like Trello. We use this as a project management tool, which we use for the actual development of not just this project, but others. And this tool offers this metaphor of cards. You might imagine an annotation might be a card. On the card might be all the metadata, the quote, etc. We might be able to view that card, and we might want to be able to move that card from one stack or grouping to another. Right? So we might say, this really belongs in this group, this belongs in this group. So this is an interface we're experimenting with and discussing. So this is a manual kind of organization, but you could also imagine automatic organization, right? So that as a tag gets added to an annotation, it automatically shows up in the correct list. Right? That gives you a reason to use those tags and a way to leverage them. So that's one idea of an interface we might incorporate into the tool in the future. It's my personal sort of the going vision I have in my mind, but it's a collaborative process. Another one would be, and I'll move to the next slide here. Okay, so we just talked about that. You might also want to be able to outline your ideas. So moving from these kind of automatic or manually structured stacks of cards, maybe you would like to begin to create a hierarchy or a structure for your ideas. Begin to put headings in place, build an argument, add annotations into that argument. So a lot of us have thought about these things. Someone came up with the idea of how about an outline, an online outliner, a browser-based outliner. So here's an example of a browser-based outliner. I can type an idea. I can put sub-ideas in place. I can add another main idea. I can move them around. So I could say, well, let's move this one below this one. That sort of thing. You can imagine that we can imagine that cards annotations might be inserted into this outline. Okay, so from that basic kind of prototype idea, we think that there's some potential use for writing teaching. Finally, composition, and this is the other main piece of this writing cycle. we're very eager to allow people to use the tool that they like to use for writing. We do have an editor built into Annotation Studio, which you've perhaps used already. It's not bad if you've ever used webmail or a blogging platform, you've used a tool like this one. But we don't think it's ideal for everyone. So we think we're going to support composition by allowing people to export either those stacks of cards or those outlines to either the cloud for use with Google Drive or Google Docs, something like that, or to a local drive for use with Microsoft Word, and then allow you, of course, to re-import that draft and use it within Annotation Studio to get feedback. Okay, so very quickly, because I'm sure I'm already over time here, I'll talk briefly about the second half of the year. We're going to be upgrading to Annotator 2.0. Annotator is the engine that provides that interface that allows you to do the editing. It is actually 2.0 is already in beta, and there's a lot of very exciting features coming along with that, including better keyboard accessibility, which is important for users who don't see or don't see well. Image annotation and video annotation are in some part of their roadmap. Sooner or later, we'll see when that comes. Very important feature will be compatibility with the Open Annotation standard, which is being managed by the W3C. This will allow people to take their work with them and use those annotations on other platforms that also conform with that standard. So we think that's really important. Better touch support, better PDF support as well. We also have internally planned features including supporting side-by-side texts, media repository, allowing you to upload images and video, manage them, insert them into documents and into annotations. Improvements to groups to make them more easy to use. They're important and they're a little opaque at the moment, as some of you may have experienced. We want to make it easy to join them, to manage them, to share things with groups. Named entity recognition is something that our researchers have some experience with, and we're hoping to be able to integrate some of that in that functionality into Annotation Studio to allow layers of annotations like the one I showed you earlier to be generated based on place names, people, that sort of thing, and to be layers that could be available to readers as they work, and possibly mapping. I mean, there's a lot of things we could imagine doing. We also want to, based on some of that open annotation compatibility, leverage it and really try to deepen our integration with and our interoperability with some existing tools so that whatever the appropriate tool for what you're working on, you can use that. Learning management systems. LTI is a standard for integrating with LMSs, and we're thinking about adding support for that. Digital archives, OAuth for our social platforms. And then at Hofstra and elsewhere, there are lots of tools that are being built up, and you've seen that ecosystem, which can interoperate with our Annotation Studio already, TextLab, and other projects that they're working on there. So that's the quick and dirty roadmap overview. Like I said, I can't take questions right now, but I'd be thrilled to meet with you and talk with you at the breakout session and beyond. The support forum is here. We're always keeping an eye on that and happy to answer questions, and the websites are too. Thank you.